With opening day in the books, the 2023 MLB season is officially underway. The reigning champion Houston Astros will look to repeat, while other contenders aim to take that next step into postseason triumph. I'm Carlos Garcia, joined alongside Jackson Tortone. And Jackson, what about the bottom feeders? Out of the last year's teams that missed the playoffs, who do you think is going to make a run and potentially see some October baseball this year?
So my pick has got to be the Milwaukee Brewers. They made the playoffs the past few years before that, and they've shown a lot of consistency over these last few years. So last year, they had a pretty decent record of 86 and 76, just missed playoffs to the Phillies, who ended up going to the World Series, which is pretty telling in about how a team with not so much of a good record can make it to the World Series. Now, the Brewers have two of the best pitchers in baseball, Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burnes, which Corbin Burnes was the NL Cy Young a couple years ago, and he even had a 2.94 ERA last year's, and we all know that he is one of the best pitchers in baseball. In fact, I think the MLB has him ranked at second. Now, they also have a pretty decent lineup in Rowdy Tellez. They have Jesse Winker, Willie Adames, and of course Christian Yelich, who won the 2018 MVP, and I think is overdue for a really good season. So I think the Brewers overall have a pretty good shot at making it in this year, considering the fact that their only real competition is the Cardinals, because I can't see the Cubs being that good. I just can't see them making a real playoff run in their own right. But yeah, the Cardinals are going to give them pretty good competition, but I think the Brewers can make a wild card spot. How about you? Which team do you think can make it in?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go with a team that somewhat is a standout, and they've been a bottom feeder for many, many years. Most recently, just making the playoffs for the first time in about 20 years in that 2020 season, that COVID year. The Miami Marlins, I think what they've been able to do, really, they're in a competitive division, right? The NL East has got the Braves, the Phillies, who else am I? Braves, Phillies, Mets, and obviously the Marlins and the Nationals. They've been the bottom of that division for a couple of years.
Those Nats are real scary, I know, yeah.
Absolutely. But I think this is the year. I mean, you see what they do. Everybody talks about, how like the Angels, that they're going to be the team, right, to make it out. And because they have Ohtani and Trout, and what Ohtani did in the WBC was unbelievable, right? But I think it's going to be the Marlins who are going to take that next step and hit the postseason stride this year. What they've been able to do and go out and get all-star first baseman Luis Arraez from Minnesota, a guy who won the AL batting title last year. And we have to think, last year before Jazz Chisholm got hurt midway through the year, the Marlins were battling neck and neck with the Phillies for a playoff spot. So they were in it. Obviously, Jazz goes down, and the season is kind of a boom or bust right there. But Sandy Alcantara, winning the Cy Young, he was kind of the highlight of the year. But just going out and getting Luis Arraez, signing Gene Segura, and also signing Johnny Cueto as well, who's going to start in a couple days. I think the Marlins are really going to be able to take that next step. They've also signed and given extensions to some of the guys like John Birdie, who won the stolen bag title last year with 41 stolen bases in the league, leading the league. So I think the Marlins are really going to be that team who are going to take the next step. And although very, very competitive division, we saw the Phillies made the World Series last year, and then the Braves, obviously, Ronald Acuna going down last year didn't help them at all. But it's going to be really competitive this year. I think the Marlins may be able to take that next step and get to the postseason. However, we're going to hone in right now on opening day, right? We've already seen that one series is already completed. A couple of games have gone by into the season. Jackson, who's a team that you think have stood out so far and really impressed you in just 3-4 games so far?
So I got to go with the Texas Rangers. Now, a lot of people were saying that they could end up being decent even though they've been in the basement for the last 5-6 years, especially after those few losses to the Blue Jays in the playoffs and such. But them winning that first game against Philadelphia, who is pre-ranked to be one of the best teams in baseball, putting up 11 runs against Aaron Nola as a starting pitcher and against one of the top bullpens in baseball, that was very telling in how good their offense is. And they may be able to compete with teams like the Angels and the Astros over there in the West, and the Mariners. I forgot the Mariners. But yeah, the Rangers could make a run like they did back in 2010, 2011, potentially. How about you? Which team stood out to you for the opening day?
Absolutely. Well, I got to go with some of the younger guys. I'm going to go up north to the 6. Let's go to Toronto, where the Blue Jays are been on an absolute tear. I mean, just picking up from last year, obviously their season didn't end how they wanted to last season, getting swept in that wild card series against the Mariners. But the Blue Jays, what they've been able to do with George Springer and Vlad Guerrero Jr., I mean, we saw on opening day, George Springer had 4 hits and Vlad Guerrero had 3 RBIs. So really propelled them to a victory, and then they've been able to kind of pick up the momentum from last year. Obviously, a lot of unfinished business in Toronto, but I know that Vlad Jr., he's a guy who hit 30-plus home runs last year, and he's been that guy for them, right? Obviously, at third base, the hot corner. He's done everything and anything for them. Obviously, George Springer commanding the outfield. But really, those two guys, when you hone in, and then I'm not even going to touch on pitching because pitching has been a completely different animal for them as well. That's what really carried them that late postseason run last year, or in the late season run to get them into the postseason. But the Blue Jays are a team, I mean, very premature. It's only been 3 games so far into the season, but they're a team who's really stood out to me. Well, it's only been a few games since the 2023 season kicked off, so we'll have to wait and see how our predictions play out. For Jackson Tortone, I'm Carlos Garcia, signing off.